news and your views.
Alan Corcoran.
And well done to Phil Skelton. They say that knitting is one of the most therapeutic hobbies you can have, and to kind of look at that in detail, I'm joined by not one but three ladies who knit, and one of them is Margaret, and we also have Terri, and we also have Rosaleen in studio here. But come to you first off, Margaret. Siobhan, who works with us here in South East Radio, said to me yesterday, I believe knitting is very good therapy. So is that true?
Yes, Alan, it is, and thanks very much for inviting us in to talk about it. It is, and it has been proven scientifically, and I think there has been evidence from the Mayo Clinic and other, well-renowned medical bodies. But we found that knitting, it's not only about the knitting, it's about the social interaction. And we have a large knitting group in Access 2000. We have about 25 women who come on a Tuesday to meet, and as I said, it's not all about the knitting, it's about the social interaction. But from a psychological point of view, I think knitting is good for your mental health, because it's a repetitive act. You're concentrating on it, you're not ruminating on other issues, and, it keeps you engaged.
Right, and Terri, for you, what do you enjoy most about knitting?
Well, I never knit in my life. I couldn't knit a stitch.
Yeah.
And I never read a pattern. I never read a pattern until now. And I'm after knitting Peppa Pig. I'm after knitting hats for premature babies. I'm after knitting hats for my grandchildren. Yeah. And there's always somebody there to help you.
Right.
There's always, you never feel stupid because there's someone will just step in.
And when you say you never knit anything, was it a fear of knitting or what was it?
I just hated it. In school, because I was always dropping stitches and I used to get slapped. Right. And I never did it until, and I was really enjoying it. And we have the cup of tea and the chat and, but it's real. And if you've anything on your mind, worried about anything, there's always somebody there to talk to you and everything. And it's just everything.
Rosaleen, I have a memory of my mother knitting on Bonnie sweaters. What was all that about?
Well, you see, there was an agent who came and she gave you the wool, a couple of skeins of wool, and you had to have it done within a fortnight. My mother did it. I'll never forget, the time she put into it, and the payment wasn't very, very much. Yeah. And you think of all the hours, but still, that was her way of making that extra few shillings for her to look after the children. And her neighbour across the street, she fascinated me because I was looking at him as a youngster, and the neighbour had the needle under that arm and the needle under, and she was like this. Yeah. It was like a train. Yeah. She was fabulous, and she couldn't knit anything without a pattern.
Right.
And she was brilliant. Now, I didn't like Aaron knitting because I had to hold the wool for my mother to wind it,
Yeah.
And I didn't like the feel of it. But I got to like it then, and I did knit a couple of cardigans for my nieces and nephews.
Right. It was so complicated. I had visions of holding the wool, as you say, for my own mother, and indeed my grandmother as well. Yeah. It was, you had to kind of stand there. My granny was always decent. She'd always give you money for a bottle of orange or something at the end of it. So,
Alan, then we discovered the backs of chairs.
Yeah.
And that came in handy then. You didn't have to hold your hands out.
I was in the Selsker College a few years ago, and they have a knitting class, and boys and girls knit there.
Yes. And interestingly, I mean, knitting was originally the domain of men. Yeah. Men were the knitters, and men set up all the original knitting guilds, and they looked after the quality and the production, the sale of knitted garments. That's going back, back to the Dark Ages. And then sometime in the 17th century, I think some bright spark, a Mr. Lee invented a knitting machine, and Queen Elizabeth then was very upset because she thought all her craftspeople would be put out of work and that they wouldn't be able to have an income. But so really women came into knitting much later than that. And then during the war and during the Great Depression, there was all the knit for the country and knit for the soldiers and knit for the... Yeah. But now, then, it kind of, with the introduction of mass-produced garments, it went by the way. But now there's a big resurgence in handcrafted knitting. Yeah. Something like this, it's a cultural icon. you'll pay a fortune for it in,
What is that?
in New
Just
York. That
remind us.
is an Aaron sweater.
Yeah. Made famous by the Clancy brothers.
Exactly.
They made them famous worldwide,
Yes,
didn't they?
That's right, they did. And I mean, this something like this would sell for a fortune in New York.
Yeah.
But there is a big rise in knitting, and amongst men of all different backgrounds, because of the value of it. Because it's like a mindfulness exercise. If you're concentrating on your knitting, as I said, you're being distracted from your other worldly concerns. But also, it's been said that for people who learn a skill like this later in life, that will help your brain pathways, and they believe it will help with the deterioration of people's brain
function. And what about
function.
hand movement as well?
Yes.
Again, for arthritis, that kind of rhythmic movement is good for.
Right. You have a ball of red wool. We haven't got an hour to do this, but you're going to give me a pair of knitting needles. All right, you've already got it. What do I actually do here now? Right.
Rosaleen will show you.
Rosaleen will show you.
Okay, Rosaleen. Yeah, you're talking to that. Margaret, you talk as you explain what's going on here. Right.
I'm doing the first row, and you have to do.
Rosaleen is teaching Alan how to do.
No, I'm slipping the first.
I remember the old words: knit one, pearl
Pearl
one.
one.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
This is basic
That's a
stocking.
reed. That's the reed.
This is knit one, pearl one.
Now this is just plain stitching, simple.
Plain stocking stitch, isn't that what they call it now?
Yes,
Needle in.
So put the needle in.
Put the thread around.
The thread around here.
Around the back.
No.
Oh, sorry.
Around here.
Listeners,
No, you better help me.
this is a treat.
This is a disaster.
No, it's not. Now look, you put that in there and do that.
Okay.
Now
Just give it out to me now.
We will
Margaret.
have
No.
there you go.
Do it again. So
We'll form a
put the
knitter's
thread
guild in
around.
Southeast Radio.
around here.
No.
No.
I
You
show
watch it, right? Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
Now that's simple, Alan.
Okay.
Well done,
Now
Rosalie.
in you go.
Okay.
Around you go. Off you go. In you go. In you go. Now in between.
In here.
No. In
Well
between.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it in between.
Now you have to catch this and
So,
out you
listeners,
go. And
Alan is
there's your stitch now, and now you
producing
go again.
Right.
In
what
you
looks
go.
like
And
a
out you
tie
go.
And
here.
out you go. And you know what? I wouldn't mind giving you an hour's tuition. What's it?
Michael's seen it
Well
out
done,
there.
Lord.
He loves jumpers. He's our producer, and I say Michael would be definitely. You could start a little knitting class down here in Southeast Radio.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
away.
A
She's away in a
knitter's
hack here now, isn't she? Yeah, she's away.
You and me, we call it the knitting and bitching.
Do you hear what she said there?
I heard what she
Between
said.
you and me and half of Southeast Radio, she said it's knitting and bitching.
Well, it's not
No,
quite
we
like
don't.
that
No,
now.
not
in
quite.
accents, actually.
No, not in our circle.
We're only ribbing each other. That's all.
Yeah.
It's a very sociable group.
It is, yeah. No, it's brilliant.
And we have women from all kinds of backgrounds. We have, we've a couple of Spanish women. We have a woman from Peru. We have a Filipino woman.
Have you?
And they're all coming.
Yeah,
they're
they're all
knitting, but
And
they're
have they
practicing.
different styles, Margaret?
Well, everybody teaches somebody something.
You know, everybody will help somebody
Yeah.
if you don't know. They're all.
And they practice their conversational
Oh,
English.
they do, yes.
So
they do,
there
yes.
are
Got some
other
lovely
benefits.
text coming in. My son is 11, has ADHD and has started knitting in school. He finds it very calming for him and he
Yes.
loves it.
Excellent.
Yeah, it
That's
is,
great.
it is.
Right.
It is.
My aunt is still knitting. She's 92. There's a knitting club in my daughter's school and they love it. Even the boys, very therapeutic and so much better than watching a screen.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And you produce something tangible as well
Yes,
at the end of it, which is brilliant.
We did. Was it last year, or the year before? We did for premature babies, and we did. And we
The little hats, is it?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
hats, and we
and
presented
sent them up to the hospital.
To the hospital.
They were delighted.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I feel like I'm on an edition of Loose Women this morning. We're doing a bit of knitting and bitching, aren't we?
well, there is a group out there called Rose and Bros, Alan. It's
Rose and Bros?
Rose and Bros, yes, for men.
Yeah.
You know, Rose and the brother.
yeah.
And there are also large knitting groups that kind of meet up on the internet. Like there's a big group called Ravelry. I think there's about 6 million members worldwide. And they, they
Well, Rosaleen is the most relaxed guest I've ever had in studio.
She's knitting away there.
She's knitting away here on the rail.
That's how you do it. You do it on the train, you do it in the waiting room.
And then,
it just
and then you talk, and then you
occupies
mix,
you.
and then you have to go back and.
What is the biggest thing you've ever knitted, Margaret, or the most demanding thing?
Actually, as a group, we knitted a large blanket. Now, it's a very serious issue. It was a large blanket. It was an installation which we had as part of an art exhibition in the County Hall, and it was to commemorate women who died as a result of domestic violence.
Okay.
And the women put it together. It was all sort of white squares and black squares, and the black squares represented the women who died.
And you, this is
This
Peppa
is on a
Pig.
funnier, yes.
Yeah. Oh, lovely.
She's done that.
That's
Peppa
lovely.
Pig, and for you, Rosaleen.
Oh, my greatest achievement was I knit a dog's coat for my dog.
That's right.
Did you?
Yes.
What's the dog's name?
Teddy.
Teddy the dog.
He's the love of my life.
And this piece here, this shawl.
My mother knit that about, Lord of mercy, about 30 years ago, and I kept it. I didn't give it away.
No,
because
it's beautiful.
I loved it just to look at it.
Yeah.
She knit many an Aran jumper for money.
Yeah, so
That's
my
the
mother
only
and
way they got
sister,
the
they
extra
all
few
did it that
shillings.
time. Yeah, they did.
You know,
Enjoyed the chat. If people want to become part of this, just remind them again, Margaret.
Well, they can contact us at Access 2000 on our webpage, www.access2000wexford.com, or on our Facebook page, or give us a call on 053 9121 200. We'll probably have to start up a second group now for another morning, because we have so many people who are interested.
interested.
Could I leave Rosaleen there for the next hour or so?
She'll keep you calm.
Farm Forum boys are coming in
And
here.
it's a sweatband for when you're going by my house.
Like to Darcy, I was thinking like that.
Yeah.
He's a neighbour of mine.
Okay. All right.
For jogging, Rosaleen.
We'll talk to you tomorrow. We have a fantastic story for tomorrow. It's a story of hope. I don't want you to miss it. It starts the show at 10:15. It really is truly inspirational. Please don't miss it. 10:15.